All right, well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our meeting this morning. I'd like to call to order the February 10th School Board Workshop. And I would also like to welcome Dr. Adrian McElroy, Assistant Superintendent for Human Relations and Labor Management. Did I get that right? No. Thank you for sitting in for Superintendent Mandello, who couldn't be here today. And I will now hand it over to Vice Chair Atkinson.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So the first item that we have on the agenda is priority 1 under the district strategic plan. So if we could have Mr. Bedford and Dr. D come on up.
The whole team wants to come on up.
Anybody else who's coming up?
The whole team.
Back to
Whole team, packing the table.
Hey, Susan.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
The Divisions of School Support and Division of Learning are here to provide our middle of the year update on Priority 1. Priority 1, as we know, is students. I believe the last time we were here was back in September. We gave a kickoff of the upcoming school year to kind of go over all 5 objectives, show you where we ended last year and where we hope to go. This is the middle of the year review. We'll show you some data and some progress points on all 5 objectives that'll give you a good idea of how far we progress. If you take a look at our subcommittee Priority 1 committee members, it's composed of some district level employees, some school-based leadership. We have some reading coach and math coach, and most importantly, we have some outside organizations, NAACP, the Republican Club, and maybe the most important composition or individuals that attend our meetings are Hannah Dickinson and Summer Hill from Port Charlotte High School in Lemon Bay. We're adding a Charlotte High School student who should be joining us, I believe, on the 26th.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. Angie's
So
giving me that name.
it was pretty interesting at our last committee meeting. We had a PowerPoint ready to go. We were going through the PowerPoint and we kind of looked at each other as a group and said, stop. Let's talk to the students. Where do you think we're at with mental health? How do you think we should tackle attendance, vaping? And they actually led the conversations. So those are our clients, if you will, our customers, and they were truly an important part of the discussions. Vision, mission, and core values. Our vision is success for all. Our mission is to educate, inspire, and support all students to build stronger communities, and our core values are listed. Priority 1 is, once again, students, a focus on students, with our goal being we will prepare all students to graduate ready for enrollment, enlistment, or employment. But once again, we gave a beginning of the year kickoff in September. We've heard from Priority 2, 3, and 4 committees. And now we're gonna do a middle of the year springboard. Our 5 objectives, we have some hardworking individuals that will be presenting to you today. I know Mr. Bedford's gonna talk about Objective 1. Objective 2 will be Dr. Granstra. Objective 3 will be Rebecca Marazon. Objective 4 is a combination of Jack Ham and Susan Flores. And Objective 5, with our mental health supports, is our team of mental health experts, Susan and Rebecca.
So if we look at last month, I presented kind of how we did the professional learning day for the staffs. And we talked about learning gains for all, right? That was kind of our mantra for that. So what I wanted to do was bring you back and update you on some of this slide was shared last month, but I wanted to update you on where we're at. First of all, we had the data chats with each of the groups. There were 4 separate data chat sessions. Each school presented between 30 and 35 minutes of questions that we had asked them that we wanted to know. This was in front of the assistant superintendents. It was in front of the directors that are here. And they presented what their plan was to make sure that every student was going to be given the opportunity to get a learning gain. We had 2 elementary groups. We had to break them out into groups of 5. We had 1 high school group and we had 1 middle school group with that. So basically around the action plan was how they were going to get action plans from every teacher Once the teachers looked at their individual student data, the teacher had to create an action plan on how they were going to address some deficiencies and learning gains. If students were not on track to get a learning gain, they had to give those back to the principals. The principals had to review them. They had to meet with them to give them feedback. What we did is we said, okay, principals, what did you do? And now what are you doing going forward? So all teachers did do an action plan. Principals did collect them. They also provided resources to some of the teachers that maybe needed additional resources based on their student data. So that was good to look at. And then from our perspective, how do we provide additional supports to schools that may need additional support?
Jump in real quick.
Yeah.
It was really powerful having my division, and I know all the divisions in the room hearing it firsthand. I know Rebecca with EduClimber, some additional EduClimber trainings that specific schools were asking for. Susan looking through the attendance lens, Jack looking through PBIS, the culture and discipline aspect. And just to hear the principals kind of problem solving with one another when an issue did come up. And it allowed us, my division in particular, to jump on it as quick as possible, which was really cool.
I think one of the main takeaways from a day like that is when you see principals from other schools taking pictures of slides that are up being presented by another school because of the ideas that are being shared together. And that was the whole purpose of bringing those groups together. So if we look at that, to take it the next step is now we have some early release and PL days that are coming up. And when I say early release, obviously we have one on the 11th, which is tomorrow. We have one on the 4th coming up. And then an opportunity for PL is on 3/23, where we have the teacher workday coming back from spring break, but schools have 2 hours that they can do professional learning. And it's the expectation that they are utilizing that for professional learning. And what we want in this time is we want it to reflect what they did on the January 6th date, to say, okay, you asked your teachers to put in an action plan. Are they following it? What have you done? And how are you building upon that in each one of these 3 opportunities for professional learning? So we actually collected the professional learning plans for the early release day tomorrow. We collected them last week. We went over them in DOL directors meeting. We went through them to make sure they looked back at January 6th and they drew, they were about learning gains at the individual student level. If we did not see it, then I sent them an email that said, hey, explain to me how you're going to tie this back to January 6th. There were just 4 schools that really, we knew they probably did, but it wasn't in their presentation to us. So we wanted to make sure that they were, in fact, tying that back for the teachers, because if we know anything, we know that teachers don't like to go from one thing to another thing. They like it all tied back. So it makes sense. So we're building on it. So that's where we're at, and those days are set for tomorrow. We know exactly what they're doing at their schools. We will do one more set of data chats. That'll happen in March. It'll probably happen right after spring break. One, because of spring break, but also because of the year-round schools have intersession the week before spring break. So you'd really have to, it'd almost be like the first week in March, which would be a little bit too quick. In those data chats, again, what we're going to look for is we're going to look for what did you do on these dates? How did it tie back to January 6th? And where are you now? How do you feel you're now? What data are you using to say that you feel good or bad or you're concerned? Again, aligning the resources so that when we hit that late March, early April before testing, we can really push out some resources to them if they feel like they're not meeting the need in certain areas. We have another thing happening next week, which is the district learning communities. We are doing those with 6th grade math and 7th grade math. Those were identified as the 2 main areas that we really needed to kind of push some professional learning to. They will happen here. So we have the middle schools, math teachers are getting together here on the 19th and the 24th for those DLCs with math and math coaches. So we're looking forward to that. And then obviously we're still looking at our weekly division of learning meetings where we're making sure and going through, okay, where are CNIs going? How are they supporting the schools? Really trying to do more of a push-in model from the CNI. As we look at the CNI, we say their curriculum and instruction. Right now, they're instruction. So we're going to take the next semester for them to be instructional specialists, and we're going to push them into schools and make sure that we're teaching the content correctly. They can help out with the coaching from a teaching aspect. So that's where we're at. That's an update. Do you have any questions on the update before I turn it over to Dr. Grandstrom? All right. Thank you.
All right. Last January 20th, we had our second 8th grade career exploration event. We decided to run the event ourselves. We had over 60 vendors attend that event. And really, we got to invite every single 8th grader, including Babcock joined us as well. What was neat though is, I don't know where the idea came from. I think it came from Cabinet about having the high school magnet programs participate in the event. And it turned out to be a great blessing in disguise because it gave our high school students who were presenting their high school magnet programs like an experience presenting to people. And they did a really good job because at the following event at the Magnet Expo, I talked to a parent who their son spoke to the aviation program at Charlotte High, one of the students, and he was so excited about it, he couldn't wait to go to the Magnet Expo to see those students again. And you can see their experience they're building by presenting and just those soft skills, those leadership skills. So not only to help promote our magnet programs, but also our students who participated, they got to get experience sharing their program and talking about what they did. And so we had Charlotte Harbor Event Center. Another highlight, we had an employer there, Wink News, their meteorologist, became a meteorologist because she went to a career exploration event when she was in 8th grade. And so she wanted to return the favor to that. So that was there. So the younger you go, the more it's about exploration, more about learning. Dr. Eister and I visited every elementary school this last couple months. Every elementary school is implementing the career planning guide to their students in their own different way. We gave a list of options of things to do, and they basically took with it and ran with it. Had the honor of being at Sally Jones Elementary a week ago, and they did a little wax museum thing where every student in the school dressed up a career they wanted to be when they grew up, kindergarten through 5th grade. So it was a really neat event. But every school is doing neat things like that as well. And so it kind of capstone to get to 8th grade. You got to figure out, okay, which school you want to go to, or in 5th grade, which middle school you want to go to based off that. So we're creating that culture of exploration. It's only our second time doing it. And every time we have an event, we refine it. What can we do to make it better than the previous year? Lessons learned from the first year. We had too much time for the students. An 8th grader, we found like an hour is a sweet spot. A little less, there's not enough time, and they can't see all the booths. Last year they had an hour and a half. So about the last half an hour, trying to keep them occupied. So an hour for an 8th grader is about the sweet spot there. So we learned that. We also learned this year, the event center is very, very large because we had one school was there on time, another school showed up early, and then Babcock showed up at the same time as well. So we had 3 schools. We were able to handle it. Because good knowledge for our event on April 20th, we're having the high school career fair and hiring event at the Charlotte Harbor Event Center. And each school is sending 2 grades, 11th and 12th grade, to the event. So it gave us a good idea of what the event center can handle in terms of students there. All right. We had the Magnet Fair, which I think some of you were at that one on January 27th. With the Magnet Fair, parents submit an application afterwards. And as of 2/2/26, we had a 50% more applications compared to last year. That has now changed to 100% more. We've more than doubled last year's applications into magnet programs. If any families are watching, they have until February 20th. February 20th. September 20th, my anniversary, so I got that date mixed up. Okay,
It's an important one too.
yes, there's only 2 dates you gotta remember, your spouse's birthday and your anniversary, so.
Valentine's too would be.
Valentine's Day, yes. We can't really forget that with all the stores and everything, so. But yeah, so our applications are up. We are getting an increased interest from students outside of our school system who are now choosing to go into our Charlotte public school system. If anyone wants specific details, I can give you the information, but we're seeing an increase. And we're seeing a decrease in calls and questions. So it's because the first year we did it, like what is a Magnet Expo? What's a magnet program? People are starting to get it. And we had a pretty good sized crowd, you know, to the point we were concerned that we were gonna have maybe too many people in the Centennial Park gym. Ended up being, I think, just about right. And so I think we have room for growth if we wanna use that facility too. It's nice because centrally located for families, you know, throughout the county. But yeah, very, very happy the way that went. Like I said, our students had a practice run, at least the high school students did at the Magnet, at the 8th grade event, which is very, very helpful in developing those speaking skills. And, you know, one student, you know, Mr. Claire knows what I'm talking about, one of our students really came out of his shell in terms of his speaking ability. And something where maybe a year or 2 years ago, he wouldn't have been able to, because we were at the leadership event at Charlotte High School, and he spoke to probably 70, 80 movers and shakers in Charlotte County in terms of, and he did it without having an issue at all. He really did a great job presenting that. And so lots of things are going on. Not only are students getting these technical skills, we're starting to reap the rewards of students getting these leadership skills as well, being in these programs. And then get more into business ed. So we updated the checklist this year. So I don't know if you saw in your hard copy of the career planning guide, we simplified the checklist because the goal is to have students graduate ready for their chosen E. And we found that because you don't know until you really do something, the first year of the checklist, every item on there was great and vetted, but maybe it was a little bit too much in there, maybe a nice to have thing versus a you need to have thing. So what we did was we broke the list into the required and then recommended. I'll give you one example. If a student chose they wanted to be enlisted after graduation, one of the items was visit a military base. That'd be really nice to do, but not every student may have that opportunity to visit a military base. For colleges, there's also visit a college campus. Well, maybe you can't do it. Or also Zello has virtual tours of every college pretty much in the country on there as well. So we don't want that to be a barrier to a student getting medallion who's really motivated and wants to be successful. So we created the checklist, but also we have the list of what's the required artifact for each one. And the reason that is for clarity for families and parents, but also it's consistent amongst all of our high schools. And so that way a completed checklist at one high school means the same in another high school. We anticipate like a surge of checklists being turned in towards the last minute, just like human nature. So my department and other rest of division learning can assist a school. So if a school had 100 checklists turned in, the due date for the thing in April, we can then support them in verifying that all those checklists are complete. But each school has their own system of doing it. Yeah, one school had a pretty creative idea, and I'm very excited to see how that turns out. You might see that in their numbers of completion for checklists. We met with the career specialists last week. They're starting to get a lot of activity because their scholarship deadline just passed. So now students are focused on getting their 3 checklists in so they can wear that medallion at graduation. And so right now there's not a whole lot of data because it's still February. But as March, April, May comes in, I told our career specialists start tracking as they come in so we can have numbers to compare with future years, how we're doing with that, with tracking that. And then it all goes back down to students. And so there's a photo of our career planning guide this year so people know what it looks like. It's available on our website. That plane right there that was donated, it's gonna go into our new hangar. And have you all had a chance to go to the new hangar yet? All right, and so that should be opening up, for students very soon. But we said it's a hands-on activities, and I said the instructor there created a leadership program. I call it the FFA for aviation, and it's an ambassador program for aviation, and it's giving these students a chance to shine. So anytime we have a dignitary or visitor, though, that we have the students assigned to, give us the tours of the classroom, explain what they're doing. So we already have our one employer who's moving in because of it, but then we have another employer just a county north of us who's very interested in hiring our high school students. So it's an airplane manufacturer moving to a company up state north of us, county north of us. Any questions for us?
Just thank you for all
Thank you
your-
for the update.
All right.
Pass it on.
Next. All right, good morning. All right, so I wanted to give you guys a little bit of an EduClimber update today. As you guys know, EduClimber is the program that took over Edis. It is basically our big data warehouse where we can pull pretty much any data that's in Focus plus other places. We've been able to pull some other intervention data in there as well to help make instructional decisions, but also intervention decisions. So I wanted to just give you a little data on this because I'm very, very, very proud of where we are. So this is total unique users up here, so these are just individual student, or individual teachers or staff members during that month that have logged in at least once or more into EduClimber. So you can see, like, we just started kind of building the system here. This is where we started to do our train the trainers back in July. So we had about 368 at that point. Then we started to roll out our training. So our training to the actual schools where our train the trainers went out and did that. So you can see that build, we were up to 1,007 in September. We started to go down a little bit, which is exactly what we would expect, because this is everybody. Everybody is getting those trainings between those 2 months. And then it kind of, we get into the school year, start to settle into using it. This downward trend doesn't make me nervous at all, because this is December, so we only had like a half of a month there. When we compare this to Edis was more of a 300 to 500 individual users per month range, and we're ranging here now between October, November, December, this was 639 to about 788. So that makes me super, super happy for the first year of implementation of this. I think that our elementary schools have really taken and run with this. I think just their comfort level with using a program has been helpful, but what we're noticing is we're actually noticing more logins even during the month. Whereas before with Edis, it wasn't as easy to use, so they would go in and when they had to put their data in, they would do that, versus this, they're using to more problem solve, check that data more frequently to help guide those interventions. So a lot more good conversations are coming out of that. Down here, these are total custom data walls created. So those are reports where they can pull in any data that's in the system to create those reports. You can see, again, we were doing some training down here with that, especially with our administrators. We had 141 at that point that we had trained September-ish. Went down because they're getting into the day-to-day, not, using it as much. But then you notice as we start going back into December, before they start going into that January day-to-day and all of that, it starts to go up again. And I would suspect we would start seeing this even more. I actually presented again to our APCs just before this meeting, showing them again how to pull that data. Because when we first rolled it out, we didn't have all of the data in there yet. We had pieces. It wasn't as relevant yet. Now it's getting to be more relevant. I think those are just going to continue to go up. And actually, I'll be presenting at the principal meeting breakouts coming up this next meeting as well. So that will continue to go up as well. So again, not just looking at all of the pieces in EduClimber, but actually building those walls. So that makes me happy. And the last thing I had over here was interventions. So it is way easier to pull interventions and intervention data effectiveness in EduClimber. So currently, I think it was the 29th of January I pulled this. There are 10,766 total plans in EduClimber. 26.5% of the population is in intervention. Sounds kind of crazy, but when you realize like all of the students, anybody who has a level 1, anybody who at the FAST has to be in an intervention, along with any additional students that are struggling, whether it's behaviorally, attendance-wise, social skills, any of that. So we are getting a lot of those students in interventions and documenting that. There's 88 different strategies that are being used. When you think of, there's a lot of different things that we're doing in our district. With 557 interventionists, that to me is massive. Like that's not just a couple of people doing the brunt of it. There's that many different people providing those interventions across 21 schools. That also makes me super happy, because sometimes you'll see, really great use of it in one school or a couple schools or elementary. No, we're using it in all of our schools. Do we need to still build some capacity in our secondaries? Yes. The more are in the elementary than are in the secondary, but they are there. So, and we're only halfway through the school year, a little bit more than that. So very, very, very happy to see this. And I do see this as a multi-year, really getting this up and running and using it to the best of our abilities. So very happy.
I gotta say, this was a heavy lift when she identified the issue with Edis. People weren't using it, that's the issue. Why? Too difficult to use.
Yeah.
And I know you've had some help on this as well, but Rebecca's led the charge on this to purchase the program, to get it to do a systematic rollout that doesn't overwhelm people, to get to where we're at right now, it's really cool.
It's feeling good.
Yep, it does.
Any questions about EduClimber?
Just glad to hear so many schools using the program. That's a pleasant change.
Yes.
from History.
Absolutely.
All right, good morning. I'm here to talk about strategy 4, which dives into behaviors, PBIS, and the MTSS framework. So we first want to go over what our performance indicators are in this particular category. We have 3 goals, and that is to reduce students receiving 1 or more ODRs. So last year we ended at 27 out of 100 kids received an ODR. So we'll share that update at the end of the year where we landed. Currently with our, our decrease of 1% of students who are being referred for tobacco and drugs. Last year, we had 342 tobacco referrals, and 187 drug. And then we just compared that to semester 1 of this year, we have 127 tobacco and 88 drugs. So we're still on pace to hopefully take a dip, but we don't see a spike, so that's a good thing. So our schools are doing a great job really getting after those sensors and cases.
We're using the Debate K9 as well
Yep.
this year.
The K9's getting, random searches there. And of course, we want to increase our PBS model schools. Last year, we ended at 4. And again, we'll have that information in the fall when they submit those applications in June. So TBD on that. So I just definitely wanted to share an update on the minor infractions. You may recall at the beginning of the year, we talked about how we're updating teachers, submitting referrals and focus. So I wanted to bring you up to speed on the updates for semester 2. So I'm in the classroom. I've got a student that just didn't meet the threshold of a major, but I wanted to document it. I'm going to click on minor, and then I'm going to have a drop down on codes of what we as APs and deans decided in principles what we felt were majors. So we'll just hit a major of insubordination. What's new now for semester 2 is that we are requiring staff to call and communicate with parents when they hit a minor. So you'll see date and time and method of parent contact. So before they can submit the minor, they have to at least make an attempt. So the methods that we're asking, the recommendation would be the first one would be parent swear. We just want them to say, hey, listen, they're not in trouble. We had an issue with them out of their seat several times. They had to do a few redirects. Just want to bring that to your attention. Again, no discipline, and families want to hear that. But we want to intervene and be a partner with you. So if you could just help me address that, that'd be great. So if it's a second time, we're definitely saying, please make a phone call. We would like you to pick that phone up, reach out to that family, and have that discussion about your concerns and talk about some interventions you can do together. So we have the time, location, what intervention was used in the classroom, what was possibly the motivation to collect that data, and then they can submit that as a minor referral. The minor is not identified as an ODR. It's just a place to document it and make sure we're intervening. So once we did this change, the group asked that we go from 4 to 3. What that means, if this young man were to have 3 insubordinations by the same teacher, it would now submit it to a major. It was 4. So what we wanted to compromise with the staff was say, listen, for the efforts that you're putting in, first time's a parent square, second time's a phone call, that third time, let's go ahead and kick it to a major, because we've given you the benefit of the doubt to try to support your kiddo without getting to that major referral status. So the other thing that we did is we moved maladaptives. Maladaptives are very big when students are going through the eval process. And so a lot of times the psychs and the behavior specialists and those involved in the eval process had to go find the maladaptive piece. So what we did is we added it here. So when the maladaptive, you saw some of that go away. What that means is that we can collect maladaptive data immediately through the same platform without doing a minor or a major. So it's not a referral status at all. But what now psychs can do, and again, ESC liaisons and whoever needs the information can go in, pull their part off EduClimber, and collect that data in one spot. So we're trying to simplify and mainstream the process to get support to our students rather quickly, which leads right into PBIS. But before I jump in there, any questions about the minor?
I have a little question.
Yes.
So what is that, the possible motivation? It has to be, you have to put something in there because it's got the red star on it, but what are some of the,
So what we want to know is, were they trying to avoid the task? Were they trying to get their peers' attention? What was the motivation of the behavior based on what they viewed in the classroom. And that gives those who need that information an idea of what the issue may be. Are they struggling with learning because they're avoiding the task? Are they struggling with peer interactions because they're trying to gain their attention? Or maybe there's some ODD going on, any authority at them, they're just rejecting it. We want to know what is the reasoning behind the behavior.
Okay, so that's a little bit subjective then?
It could be,
Yes, can I add to that?
please.
So that is just the starting point, and then our psychs or behavior specialists go in, and that's how we have to have what happened before. And what happened after is the behavior. So we're able to get our antecedent behavior consequence data. So then we take that and we compare that to the more subjective data. And we're able to tell, like, this is likely occurring before it, this is likely what's reinforcing that behavior. And then we can teach better skills of how to access whatever they're trying to do more appropriately.
And this piece has been there forever.
Yeah.
This is not new for teachers, so they've become very familiar with this component of the referral.
Can parents see the minor infractions? Are we able to see that?
It depends on the school. So, good question. We brought that up. Some people were comfortable.
What's going on there?
So actually, I take that back. No, we do not share that with minors. Just because we want to keep it internal right now, and then when we get better at processing them, we do. So what we did add is we want a little note for parent communication, so the deans and admin can know what happened in that conversation. But we are looking to flip the switch. So what I meant by some schools do elect for other staff to see each other's minors, some do not. That can be controlled by the school. And that's been the task with Focus, is because it's a one-size-fit-all. So ideally, we wanted to have a K-5 and 6-12 component, but because of the platform, you can't do that. So you're really trying to find the win-win for the elementary and secondary, because both of them have different perspectives on focus and referrals. So that's why adding the maladaptive was huge for elementary, because they're elated to know that they don't have to go to another site anymore or another component of focus to implement the maladaptive information.
And I'm just thinking of like communications I've gotten in parents where from my kids' teachers, like, hey, just want to let you know a little thing. And I'm like, well, did they get a minor infraction? And I didn't, like, I'm just curious.
Yep.
If it was just like a heads up or if like they actually.
So we wanted to slow roll it and just make sure that we don't open up until we really have a tight handle on this process, since it's so new. So we're gonna bring in teachers and other support staff and all those at the end of the year to get more feedback on how we can better improve this process. But overwhelmingly, we were anticipating a huge kickback or some kickback, not much at all, if any. So we know teachers are starting to put majors to bypass contact. So we're teaching deans and APs, because what you can do is if APs and deans still have the authority, like even on the other side, let's say they don't click minor and they put a major, the dean AP can go say, no, that was a minor, or vice versa. So there's a lot of communication and dialogue between both. So what this is really intended to do is develop that classroom management component, and well as the support that the staff can provide teachers at the school site. So it's a lot more involvement there versus just sending kids out of the classroom. So, which leads into PBIS. So this little snapshot here is amazing. We have a wonderful PBIS committee through the district. And so we are now going our Q3 visits as we get schools prepared and ready to submit their application. Those who are ready for the model schools, we'll do the final walkthroughs in April before testing is almost trying to find that window in between testing to get those walkthroughs done, which ties in. We had our Q3 point of contact meetings yesterday at PDC, where we just continue to build initiatives of PBIS. Our vape task force, we talked about that. We had a student panel meeting at Port Charlotte with Port Charlotte High and Norrock kids last week. That's the best, because they just put it all in perspective. They're actually telling us to get tighter and more strict. That is great feedback. Bus committee, we're excited. Last year, we had 781 bus referrals. To put that in perspective, we had 15,000 referrals last year, just give or take. So only 781. And currently to date, we only have 341. So our bus committee is really working strongly with our schools to make sure that we're addressing and supporting our drivers. So we always can get better, but that's good data.
That's an impressive
Yep.
number. 341, it's hard to really encapsulate how impressive that is. We're not telling bus drivers they cannot write referrals.
Yep.
I want that to be out there. So that number, a lot of hard work's gone into that. 341 for 20 schools running the morning and afternoon routes.
Yeah.
It's a good plan.
And just a little proud moment, our committee was asked to come up to the state conference next in April to present what we do. From what the state was saying is we're one of one that's doing something like this, and they would like for us to share best practices. So our committee will be going up there in Bradenton to give a little bit of a Q&A on our approach to supporting our drivers and school safety. And then we are starting to dabble in some alternative to OSS. So we're trying to roll out a pilot in April. You skip called OSA for those who've been around for a while. And what that means is that students who are being suspended can attend 2 courses in lieu of the suspension, or maybe an expulsion case. So through the PBIS initiative, we want to continue to build in interventions and supports. Our schools are really heavy on OSS and ISS, and we have to slow that down a little bit. And this is an attempt to try and educate. It's going to be mandated that parents and students attend, and there'll be an academic component and then a social-emotional component with goal setting, so that we can help them make better choices and stay in school versus suspend them and lose instructional time, or maybe be moved to an alternative placement. So more to come on that, but that's a little update on Objective 4. Questions?
I'm just glad they didn't have it when I was in school.
Okay, attendance. Thank you, everybody, for being in attendance today, because that really is following up with PBIS. Our approach for attendance is that we are doing everything we can in our buildings to encourage students to come every day. No lie, though, obviously the cold weather has had an effect on quite a few of us. I don't know if Human Relations has an interesting data on that for attendance of staff, but we have those same data. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So with this, our performance indicator has been to decrease our chronic absence as defined by students who are missing 10% or more, decrease that by 1% every year. And so we ended last school year at 25.23% of our students were chronically absent. So our goal this year is 24.23. So because this is a moving target, as we know, I felt it would probably make sense to just kind of show where we were at the end of semester 1 last year compared to where we are at the end of semester 1 this year. So our chronic absence number is lower. So last year we were at 30.56%. At the end of semester 1 of our chronically absent students. This year, we're at 24.69, comparing semester 1 to semester 1. We haven't really talked too much about our average daily attendance, but it was important to put it in here. First of all, because it's increasing, so that's some good data points. But we are going up, so our trend is kind of reflective on that. And this is what our school buildings are using for that tier 1 approach. So, we're all in, everyone coming every day. And so that's the data that our school leaders are looking at in terms of trying to say, yesterday might have been a cold, rainy day. Our average daily attendance was at 88% compared to what might be typical for us at 93. So it just gives us an idea of what could be going on. So some of the things that we have really, I think, worked hard at putting in place this year that's helping to work us towards that goal, first and foremost, has been our positive messaging. So our leaders and our school staff are really getting behind that idea that the more we can send some positive messages that you're here, this is what happened because you were here with us today, how important it is you are here with us every day. So that messaging through Parent Square, because it is so very easy, we can send really great positive messaging. Parents are responsive to those messages, so that's really helped us. We still have some great support from our community as far as incentives. I'll talk a little bit about our Chick-fil-A Port Charlotte attendance contest that is coming up soon. We have the Patterson Foundation, who through the Suncoast Grade Level for grade level reading is supporting an initiative for our Tier 2 students who are beginning to show some chronic absence data, and they've actually provided at our elementary level, if students have shown improvement, $25 gas cards to families who have shown that improvement. So that's been very generous, but we've really seen some data, actually data that's been better than our surrounding counties. We did this cohort in the fall, and they had a 38% improvement, our district had closer to 50% of our families improve. So we think it's because we're using that positive messaging through Parent Square. We take those students in that cohort and we put them into a special group, so we send them individualized messaging. Like, remember, you're in the mission improved attendance, we're motivating improved attendance, so they get that information really individualized for them. Attendance child study team meetings. So with this, we started using EduClimber this year, which is super great for our attendance meetings. Because what it's allowed us to do is pull in some data. We can see all of the things that Becky just talked to us about, but we're also able to really look at some problem-solving approach. So when we have our child study team meetings, our meeting format in EduClimber is really saying, what is the student perspective on what is the reason for the absences? What are the parents' perspective? And then what's the school perspective? What's the history? What are the barriers? And really sitting down and problem solving that. That does help us then move forward with doing a review in 2 weeks. So we can see whether what we've put in place is improving or not improving and whether we take that outside of our school building. So that kind of goes along with that. So something that for me, I think Dr. D mentioned about how it was really important when we were at the data chats and things that we took away. And one thing that I heard, I guess maybe at least 50% of the school leaders saying was that they really were appreciative of some of the data that they were being given, that they were receiving on a regular basis. So something that really has been helpful in terms of this is we have, again, generous support from the Patterson Foundation with having a data specialist within our department, and Susan Moore has been able to share some direct data at regular intervals with our school principals and our attendance teams in order to kind of know where to target. And so that data being able to share and given to them, I think just takes a little bit off of their plate in terms of what all the things that they're having to look at. And I think what we heard is that's something that's helpful to them. That is attendance. Questions?
2 questions.
Sure.
The last time when you presented to us, one of the things I asked is if there was a way to track the reasons that students were absent. And I see that you're talking about it in your child study teams, but when you talk about data sharing, is that the data, like if I asked you to give me a report of the top 10 reasons kids are absent, do we have a way to do that?
We do not, because that's not a definitive field and focus as to why students are absent. We have more soft data on what do we think the reasons are, but again, we're addressing all of these as chronic absences. So an absence is an absence, whether a parent calls and says they're sick or they've gone to Disney World. So our approach to it is, regardless of the 2 reasons, we're trying to find a way for them to be in school more. So no.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I'm gonna give my 2 cents. And obviously I'm not the expert on this, but my experience has been that typically when you have a problem, right, the clearer that you can define it, the easier that you can solve it. So for example, you were talking about weather. I do know from like talking to being at meetings and talking about this issue, which is an issue across our country, is that weather is a bigger problem than we realize. If it's raining and kids don't have an umbrella, if it's 40 degrees and they don't have a jacket. So if we had a report that showed during the month of January and February, that was the cause of 80% of the absences, then you can help solve that by giving kids jackets and umbrellas. So that's just my 2 cents on that. My second question is, I don't see on the right-hand side there, I don't see truancy court. What has been the impact of the truancy court?
Sure. Thank you for bringing that up, because I think Dr. D had said, Susan, add that to the PowerPoint, and I didn't.
I'm reading your mind.
Yep. So truancy court has been extremely successful. I will say, one of the reasons I don't bring it up is because we're talking about our entire population, and we've had 8 students in truancy court. So that's a good thing. We use it judicially, truly. We don't take every family to truancy court that might meet the criteria. And the reason being is that we want to find some other ways to not add more risk factors onto a family or more onto them with the legal system implications. So, but we've had high success with our students that have gone. So they are either closed out successfully or they're continued. Our judge has closed out 2 successful. He has closed 1 unsuccessful. Meaning that they didn't meet his criteria and they've gone on to within a SINS court, Child in Need of Services court, in a different system. So I'd still say that for our system, it's still successful, they're still having intervention. And then the remaining ones have been currently continuing, but are continuing at a high rate of planned closure as a success, because they're abiding, we're just kind of doing a review of them monthly.
What's success? The kids start coming to school?
It's coming, and not just that, so I think a little highlight, and again, we're talking about very few kids, but the judges often, if students aren't being successful, families aren't being successful, they'll order community service, and some of that community service is taking place in our school buildings. And so that's increased what? Family engagement. So as an example, we might have a student who, a parent might volunteer at breakfast time. And we all know if you've been in an elementary school at breakfast time, we need more hands on deck sometimes. And then they're being able to see their child in a social situation, they're being able to kind of see the operatings of the school. They feel much more welcome in the school. So there have been some really positive things that have been unintended consequences that we've seen really as things that we can actually bring back to these child study team meetings before we get to court and make those suggestions to families. Would you like to volunteer at school? This might help your child adjust to coming to school more regularly. This might help you feel more welcome in our buildings.
The judicial involvement has been much more positive than our prior experience.
Yes. Yes. Any questions? Oh, thank you. Yeah, can you pull up that, do I have to touch something? So this is the to come, if you can see that. So we are having attendance madness. So it's our March Madness, basketball attendance competition. We will be rolling this out with principals next week. And truly, if you know anything about March Madness brackets, a little complicated, but Dr. D assured me he understood it, so we're hoping it's gonna be okay. But basically, this competition is gonna be different than our fall competition because it's going to be school versus school. It's not grade levels, it's not secondary, elementary. We're gonna have one winner at the end. And because I do like to make sure that our schools have equal opportunities, we're gonna do a double elimination bracket. A little bit different, so just so that we can allow a school might lose, but then regain and be able to be in the Final Four. And so just more to come with this. We have Mr. Romulus helping with some of our advertising, and I think it's gonna be fun. And again, we're really just trying to build that excitement for our schools and make attending fun.
Chick-fil-A gave us a basketball trophy.
Yeah, so we have it's a golden basketball. So it should be a lot of fun. All right. And then mental health.
So last but not least, and Susan and I are kind of tag teaming on this one. So a couple things we have on here. First, probably drawn to some of our pictures here. We've been talking all about those posters that we have across our campuses to just increase our visibility. So we've got a couple of our cool psych, social workers, counselors kind of posing in front of some of theirs. So this is what they look like. So as you're walking through schools, hopefully you're starting to see some of those. We've asked that, so each of them were given two. We asked that they put them in high traffic areas and also near their office. So that hopefully the kids are more familiar with where they are and what they do. Up here I have a little bit of data from Navigate Suite 360, now called Compass curriculum. So that is what we use for our resiliency skills. It even enforces a lot of the soft skills in those as well. So our goal is to, at the end of the school year, be at about 68%. So that means that students are getting at least an 80% or better on those little mini assessments at the end of each of those lessons. So our goal last year was 60%. At the end of the school year, we actually had 66% of students. Our goal at the end of this school year is 68%, and I just pulled the data on the 26th of January, and we were at 76%. So our kids are doing a good job in improving some of those skills, because we don't want to just see, infractions go down, referrals go down. We want to see that, but we also want to see that they're gaining those resiliency skills, so they're able to manage day to day. So that's very positive. We also have our newsletter that goes out quarterly. So this is the winter one that just went out. And it highlights just different resiliency skills. There's a family spotlight, a community spotlight, and then it has some specific suggestions for high school, middle school, elementary, and our preschool. So some good info there.
And if you go to our website, under mental health, you should be able to see the full newsletter. It's also on Peachjar, so between those two. And so some of the data that we kind of thought would be important to share is where we are as far as our tier 3, our highest level of students with our mental health needs. We were defining for this presentation in terms of students who have been assessed for suicidal risk. And so then in comparison of semester 1 of last year to semester 1 of this year, we've had a decline of 194 risk assessments for suicide intent down to 128. And we've shared this data with the board in past years and, you know, kind of maybe talked a little bit about what might be some reasons. So doing a little bit of a dive into kind of what we're seeing, Becky and I have really always kind of looked back to, if we give kids some good opportunities for coping skills and learning coping skills and strategies, we're going to prevent some of that behavior and some of those feelings from escalating to that level. And so we do think that is some of that. Some of the information that we've also gathered from talking to school staff who in the past have had a higher level of risk assessment is their feelings that by having that ability to work with students more frequently on these coping strategies and then also being in the buildings more, they're able to intervene sooner. So a student who's become escalated, they're able to kind of work, we know we've worked on these coping skills, these are things we need to keep in mind before the student reaches that level of making either a suicidal intentional statement or behaviors have escalated to that level. So we're really, really hopeful that that's how that's looking. One of the reasons that we feel like, again, that is an intentional decrease is that when we look at our number of involuntary examinations from these risk assessments, those have stayed pretty steady. So the students who really have, for example, there were about 20 Baker Acts at semester 1 of last year, and we're about the same for this semester as well. So the students who really truly are having those mental health struggles that are really beyond our school-based mental health are still having them. Like those are still working with our community partners and our community agencies, but our basic level of students and learning their coping skills are continuing to improve. So that's really, really positive data. I don't know if you have anything that you want to add to that.
Yeah, I just think having all of the staff that we do currently in our schools for the school-based mental health has been huge over the last several years. Our direct services have increased tremendously.
Well, Pre-Marjorie Stoneman, 7 social workers,
Oh, yeah.
8 school psychs. We
Yeah.
have individuals that it's not, you need to see somebody. Give us a couple seconds, we have somebody that can see you. It
Yeah.
sounds simplistic, but it matters.
It also is important to note that some of the districts around the state have used outside agencies to provide those mental health services. And the whole picture of what our internal people provide is just, it's indescribable to say that we're also able to look at all of the things that we've talked about in priority 1. We're able to say, what are the discipline things that are going on? What are the things that are happening in the classroom that might be affecting this? Where outside providers just have a little snapshot of something and not that whole picture, so. Questions?
No, I just have a real quick comment. I really like that family spotlight that's part of that newsletter. I really do, especially the golden rule, listen without fixing, because sometimes parents don't have the skills to deal with some of the emotions that their children are having, because it's different.
It's true.
I don't have a question, I have a comment. Great presentation, great data, a lot of positive data. And a lot of that's a result of what goes on in the school building, but then again, it wouldn't happen if it wasn't for the support your division give them. So great job, great kudos to you guys and our building, our teachers. You put systems in place, but you ensure that it gets better and you give them some support. So good job. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? And so, Dr. D, you're up
Sally.
next. Sally Jones of
Trying to get
AIDS.
a
You
little-
might
Morning.
even just stay up here. Jeff?
Per
School Board Policy 5120, school assignment within district and student assignment within school. I'm here for the annual school board review of enrollment data, which I provided to you at East Elementary School and Sally Jones Elementary School, to determine whether their attendance zones should continue to be modified to permit students of the portion of East Elementary School attendance zone to attend Sally Jones. This area is known as the Triangle and is located primarily, not exclusively, but primarily in Bernstore Meadows. If you take a look at the capacity numbers and numbers of students that are in each school, Sally and East, there is no additional financial impact to the district, so my recommendation would be to continue to allow those students the option to attend Sally Jones.
Does anybody have any questions or concerns?
No, as long as we've got space.
Yes, sir, we do.
Makes it better for our families, and that's what's important.
I'm glad we were able to continue that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up then is the conversation on the referendum. Let's see, Dr. D, or Dr. D. McKinley came back with some additional verbiage.
Yes, and I don't know, Kara, did you go to the
That was
last?
the last meeting.
Were there any other recommendations?
So they are fine with everything that's in here. They are having a lot of heartburn over the word levy
Mhm.
being in there. I think Mark put us all emails, Mike strongly recommends that we have the word levy in there. We've never had the word levy in there, but he's saying that we should now.
Please say why. I mean, because what we've been doing is working so well.
He said it's all over state statute, and Brett's letting us take it out last time, which I don't ever remember us taking it out last
Well,
time.
if it's all over state statute, when I reviewed the other referendum ballots, I find it in some.
Yeah.
But it's certainly not in all. And I would presume that they're getting competent legal counsel for their recommendations for their language as well. The word itself has implications that some people might read it more negatively. That causes me some concern. I appreciate that Mr. McKinley provides our legal counsel for this, but I honestly believe if it was required, we'd see it in every referendum ballot language. And you do see it. I'm not trying to say it's not in some of them I've reviewed, but it's not in probably less than 50%.
Mhm.
So,
And thank you, Bob. And I go back to when we started this conversation with the thought of trying to keep it as close to what has been successful over the years. And last year, that was not in there. So I'm leaning towards not including it because it was successful last year. And that's what I'm leaning towards.
I'm with you on that one.
I certainly don't have any axe to grind. I don't like the word levy because I think some people find it offensive.
I find being taxed offensive. All right, fine, that's fine with me, I don't,
All right, so we're
I
in
don't have a
agreement.
strong opinion one way or the other.
Remove levy, and then I think it stands as is besides that.
Right, and charter schools is not part of
It
the.
is, no. That's the only change.
Did you get that?
Remove levy, yes.
Very good, thank you.
That was easy. Next, we have a budget update, so if Mr. Allen could join us at the table. Talk to us about the third calculation.
Morning. So I sent out that update, kind of breaking down the third calc. We know it was released a couple weeks ago. So I didn't know if anyone had any questions on that, but to kind of give a little bit of a summary, you know, we're on track to meet all of the plans that we put in place this year and continuing to do. We're on track to continue to end the budget within the policy guidelines from the school board. We have a plan for next year. We're continuing to work on that and implement that, so it's looking favorable, you know, even though the, you know, legislation may not look favorable, you know, we're in a good spot here, I feel, going forward. So I didn't know if there were any specific questions or anything on there.
Well, I presume that we've got things in place to adjust for a hit if it comes from Tallahassee, because
We do.
it looks like it's coming.
Yeah,
So, yeah, that was one of the questions I had. You, when you were talking about this year's budget, you were gonna set aside $2 million.
Yes.
In case there were fluctuations. do you still feel the need to hold that $2 million?
At this point, I do, because we don't have fourth calc yet. So when fourth calc comes, that kind of trues up everything. And there were some things in the third calc that, I'm not sure how they made those adjustments, specifically the academic acceleration percentages. They've done some reductions there, but we don't report those statistics until Survey 5 in June. So I'm not sure what data they're using to make those reductions. So we might get that back, that might go the other way. Still some unknowns in that, so I wanna make sure we're still holding those funds, you know, just in case, so we don't have an issue. So,
So I really, I do really appreciate this.
Mhm.
That's one comment I would make. As you know, myself, John, and Kara were up in Tallahassee, and a big conversation up there that we had with the FSBA and also with Kathy Missouri, who is the most knowledgeable person on education up there in Tallahassee. And both Collier County, the representative from Collier County, and Kathy Missouri brought up big concerns about page 44 of the third calculation, where they clawed back money from 5 districts, including Collier and Monroe. I don't know the others off the top of my head. And I guess I don't understand that page 44. And I guess what I need to know as a board member is, you don't have to get into the weeds explaining to me how they calculate that, but the bigger concern is, we were told that if it continues on this path, that we could potentially see the same kind of clawback. Does that make sense?
it does. So I'm not sure specifically what was on page 44, because page 44 I have on FEFP is the economic, or the educational stabilization.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Okay, yeah, so the clawback, so the 90% is guaranteed. You're put at risk based on enrollment, based on 10% of your funds. So that's part of the rollback rate calculation that they have each year. So as part of the economic stabilization, that time you're only harmed is if your enrollment truly does make that difference. So the way the budgeting process works is at the beginning of the year, before they go into session, we have to do our projections. So we've done our projections. So last year I did the same thing. We sent the projections and we'll see. So on that page 44, you'll see that our unweighted FTE per the conference report is based on the projections that I had at that time. Second calc is after the state adds additional data to it, or they make any adjustments that they may not necessarily have agreed with local changes or stuff like that. Then the third calc is where the stabilization comes in. So as long as we are correctly predicting on that initial conference report, we should be within that ballpark. And you can see, like even on ours, you know, the unweighted funds per FTE was about $9,617, and where we ended up was $9,622. So we were within that ballpark. The state changed it to put us to the $9,650. So the reason we actually got money was because the error was they over forecasted for us while we forecasted more appropriately.
So we
If
got
we
an
are-
additional 572?
We didn't get an additional, they just did that to hold harmless so it would hold at the flat rate for what they originally gave us for the FEFP. So that difference for that 572 just brings us back to 0, because otherwise the other changes that were made would have dropped us below. And going back to that rollback rate, it's the state law requires you to affect taxes, and you can never reduce the amount of funding you had the prior year, with the exception of that 10%. But that 10% can only be affected by your true enrollment. So it's a way to slowly claw back or phase back the, you know, overfunding or underfunding. You know, it can kind of go either way.
So is that a way for the state to penalize districts who are accurate in their predictions?
I wouldn't say,
Purposely?
I wouldn't say that it's to penalize for accuracy. I think it's a way we don't say, hey, you know, we're gonna have 14,000 students, and the state goes, okay. And then we have 19,000 students, and then the state's left making up the difference. that's kind of how they do it. And it works in reverse, right? They don't want us to overtax our citizens saying, oh, well, we're gonna have 25,000 students and then we have 15. You know, it's a way to kind of mitigate that. And
Is that
the-
where the clawback comes from when they?
yeah, when they're so far on one side or the other. If you're within a margin, they don't really adjust it. As long as you've increased, they haven't adjusted it. If you've fallen below it, they've adjusted it for a little bit. So you should be able to take that, $31.02 and multiply it by the unweighted FTE. That's how you get to that 572 on that. But that kind of just brings us back to the middle, if that makes any sense. It's all a very complicated formula, to get there. And, truthfully, I understand that, when we're providing our input, we're providing the local input of things we might know that are happening within the district. Because we know that the funding for 4 through 8 is at a different rate than K3. K3 is funded higher. So if we have an idea locally, for example, that we're not gonna be promoting every single third grader, we have 150 we think are gonna retain. Well, the state doesn't know that until we tell them, and that's part of that forecasting piece. So if they all moved up, that would reduce our funding there, but in reality, when the calculations came out, they're gonna be back into third grade, so the state would then owe us money. And they want us to be as accurate as possible, and we wanna be as accurate as possible too, because then we don't have big swings one way or the other. As far as what happened in some of those other counties, without diving into their specific data, at a very high surface level, I think some of the clawback came from the over prediction of family empowerment in certain areas. Some of it came from, there was some duplicates in family empowerment, and we've been reporting the duplicates, and the duplicates have come off, but they also, in the spring, accounted for some of those that happened to be duplicates, and I think they had a lot that came off and a lot that didn't come to school and things like that. And some of those things are just, it's hard to predict for, because you don't know a family who's never been in the system, in the public school system. We know the families that are transferring from other districts, a lot easier than those that are going straight into either private schools or scholarships. So it makes it a little more volatile on that piece, but fortunately for us, 85% of our students are choosing, our public schools, so we have a good idea where they're at. That's not always the case, especially down in like Monroe County, I know was one of those examples. I mean, they're so spread out, they may be traveling a long distance to go to the one school that's available. I think they have a much higher, family empowerment, scholarship, doing online school and other options there, more so than what we would have. But, kind of some positive news, you saw on that calculation that 46,000 plus students in the state of Florida were missing off of this report. And that comes from some duplicates, but that also comes from just overall over projections that we didn't know about, right? There were 6 districts that actually had a net positive gain to public school enrollment. We were one of them. So it wasn't a huge number, it was about 20, but there's also 61 districts that lost. So, I think that's a very fortunate thing for us to be in, and that does help, with our budget, and that does help with our, overall fact that our community is choosing our district, over other options.
I think what both Stephanie Lucarelli, who's the board member in Collier, and what Kathy Mazurek were talking about is it sounded like for those counties that maybe they weren't holding at that 90%. And that was their concern, that if they don't hold at that 90%, they could keep.
And that's what it is, because the 90% moves every year, right?
Right.
So with us historically, and I've gone back, 10, 15 years, we've been plus or minus sub 100. Either way, we'll go up, 75, 80, we'll go down 75 or 80. We've always kind of maintained more so in the middle. There's a couple drastic years like 2008, where I think more people left. But since then, we've been pretty stable, and I think that's pretty fortunate for us, whereas other areas really depends on the job market and the construction market for whether or not those families are moving to those areas. Our 90% is pretty consistent, for a good amount of time.
I think what they were saying, if you listen to the conversation, was that they didn't use 90%, maybe they used a higher number or something. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and ask Stephanie, but all I know is that it was a great concern, that they felt like that maybe, when the calculations were done, that they weren't holding to what was agreed upon in statute.
Gotcha.
Which is why they said that we should be concerned, because if they're not gonna hold to that number, what's in statute, there's nothing to stop them.
Sure.
And I guess as far as like the enrollment projections and the -50,000, we don't really know the reason, but, you know, just looking at our elementary school projection, we've got 100 fewer kindergarten kids this year than we did in fifth graders.
Yeah,
So if we have
and if you
fewer
look at the
kids
birth
being born,
rates,
and
they're
it's not just
similar
us,
too.
it's
Yep.
across the country, we've got fewer people are having kids, so.
And that's why it's important to be accurate with those projections, to the best of our ability, especially when we, know things happening within our own county. It's, important feedback that we do provide to that.
So one of the things that I've brought up, did anybody have any other questions on that? One of the things that I've brought up consistently, probably going back 10 years, is the need to have these conversations here at the workshop table. And I've asked multiple times about the workshops. So I did a poll of several different districts to see who else, are we the only ones not doing budget workshops? And let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I called 11 different districts, including Sarasota and Lee. 10 of those 11 do regular budget workshops. The only one who does not is a district that reached the 3% threshold and had to go in front of the State Board of Education, which does not speak well for not having budget workshops. I got the impression from the superintendent that he's looking for direction from this board, whether we see the need to have budget workshops or not. I do, personally I do, I think it's a good practice. I don't enjoy like the last time having to have the conversation from the dais about what my feelings are about the budget. I would much prefer to have that conversation here at the workshop table. And also I think, this is one of 3 important jobs this board has. We should be talking about it on a regular basis, I think.
Of those, those districts that you talked to, was there some structure to how they proceeded during the workshop with that, or?
Yes, there's different ones. Some of them, what they do is they have workshops that are divided according to the areas of the budget. So like one workshop might be on the capital, one might be on operating. Typically, I think the norm is at least 3. Some do where they do it after each calculation, get an update of where we're at. So those are kind of the 2 trends I saw.
In addition to, what we would have, 3 plus?
We're not doing any budget. Just right now, the budget discussions have been ad hoc when I request them.
Mark and I had a conversation about this too, and I said, I think that the more information we can get out there, the better. And I think the more we can inform our community about how our budget works, how we're funded by the state, I think that's all really important information. And you do a good job at the meetings, kind of explaining it in a quick synopsis. But I think if we could have, in addition to information we're talking about in our workshops, if we added in a budget, like today, this is very helpful, right? So we kind of are all on the same page of where we're at and what's happening. So I'm not opposed to having additional budget conversations at our workshops at all. I think it's good for all of us to have those conversations and talk about it publicly, where we're at and what's happening at the state, what our budget's looking like.
Plus, I need to hear from my colleagues, right? The way that we've been doing it right now, which is like on one-on-ones with you, but that doesn't allow for any ability at all for me to know what my colleagues think about it. And the reason we have 5 people on this board, 5 people that all have, bring different skills to the board, is so that we can hear from each other. And I would much rather be hearing from you sitting here than up there.
We want it as part of a regular workshop, or do we want to schedule every quarter an additional workshop just for budget, which way, would be more?
I think, I'm fine with doing it as part of the regular meeting. So, I think the majority of districts I spoke with schedule like separate budget workshops. But I would be fine doing it as part of a regular meeting as long as it's regularly calendared. And I guess we have to first we need to come to consensus. If we've got a majority of people here who want it.
Considering that, as long as we have some kind of structure to it.
Yeah.
And, as far as negotiations and stuff, I don't know if that's gonna.
I think more informative, again, like today, this is very helpful, he's bringing us information that's just been presented from the state, it's in their calc, I think that's an important conversation, so we're all on the same page of, again, what's happening, what it's looking like, and just kind of keeps us all above board on what's going on, so I think after the calculations maybe come in, maybe as we're gonna for budget season, talk.
Yeah, I think that's an appropriate time to do it, because, is. I mean, we should be quite accurate with our
Right.
final budget.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we have little amendments here and there, which, I mean, there's thousands of amendments that happen. It might move $1 from here to here because that, you know, that building had another teacher and this one lost a teacher, or people flopped around. But besides that, the major changes come around the calculation time.
Yeah.
Where that changes our fiscal outlook. So I think that is probably an appropriate time to, you know, kind of have those. You know, cause we could have a meeting when the conference report comes out, for example, and just say, hey, you know, this is what it compares to what we had last year and here's what it looks like going forward. And we can see that there's a difference, and that's why we're talking about this page 44, on what happened with the conference report, which is what we have to build the budget on, and then the second calc, which we have to quick update the budget on, you know, in July. So that, you know, there's a lot of stuff subject to change still, but, you know, we can at least talk about some of those things, and, you know, I can research or answer any questions that you have in between those times.
I would
I like
appreciate that.
having it after the counts.
Yeah.
So we don't get all into the weeds.
And it's hard to agenda that like way in advance because as we
Yeah,
know,
we
the
don't know when
state
they
has
come
not
out.
been good about
So-
keeping to a schedule. So it's one of those things like once we have it, like once the third count comes out, or I guess next we're in the fourth count.
Yep.
Then to schedule it for whatever the meeting immediately following fourth calc is.
Yeah.
And I think what's really brought this to the forefront, what's made it more complicated is having those family empowerment scholarships and having the charter schools. And that the fluctuations, as kids are moving from here to there, and we really do need to stay on top of it. We don't need to, you know, the board does not wanna have surprises, right? We wanna be able to plan in advance and know what's coming.
Yeah, and fortunately for us, at least with the charter schools, they live in our student information system, so we're able to see that
Yeah.
in real time. So we would know if something, you know, came
It's
up.
too bad the state can't see that. Like, it was crazy, but this last year, they were projecting no enrollment in charter schools.
Minimal increases. Yeah, because we talked about that. Yeah.
Thousands of people moving every year.
Yep, and you can see in that third calc, right, we knew about 100 probably would increase at Babcock. And what were we up, like 80? 82. So, I mean, you know, those types of things are important to have that local input too, you know, for the awareness. Because we probably wouldn't have had to swing as much had we, you know, had more allocated there from, you know, the conference report, so.
And I'll just say one more thing in light of all this. Based on the 2 meetings that I've had up in Tallahassee now, I would be planning on a flat budget for next year. Minimal if any increase based on everything that we're hearing. I mean, I'd like it if I was pleasantly surprised, but I'm not optimistic about that.
So for, before you go, clarity purposes, did you get that? So we are gonna do workshops on budget,
No,
but
we're
kind of
gonna-
base it on.
We're just gonna add a little bullets in the workshop already planned. We're not gonna do a budget workshop.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
After the calculations are released.
Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
And,
I just need like at least a week to go through it.
We will make it the next day, don't worry.
and, no question, but, comment, thank you, Marcus, for your succinct report and very clearly written.
Yeah.
In the last statement, you wrote, which is very positive, we're still on track to finish on budget, so outstanding, so.
Great work.
All right.
Thank you.
On track is good.
On track is good.
Very good. Okay, last, we have Baker policy. update.
So everything is uploaded in board docs for the agenda for the last, policy council meeting, and we're good to go.
Okay, anybody think that we need to attend a workshop? All right,
Yep.
pass it back to you.
All right, thank you, Vice Chair Atkinson, and with that, I adjourn this meeting and want to thank Dr. McElroy for joining us today, and look forward to her joining us tonight during the school board meeting. All right, thank you.
Good evening.